in chemistry, and then I was in the radiology department at Stanford for a number of years, and then I moved down here in 2015. So, and I'm excited to teach this class. So this is one of your, yeah. I have it right here. Is it on? Do you see me when I speak? Does it go into the mic? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to videotape the lectures, so I think that will be fun. So every lecture will be on YouTube. So, and we'll get you that link once it comes out. So the one trade-off is there may be one, maybe two, but definitely one where I'm just going to send you the YouTube link because I got to go to Philadelphia and you're going to be on your own that day. So that's the trade-off for having all of these to be able to go back and look over. So I've never done it like this before where we videotape, but other colleagues in the department that have say the feedback they got was really good. So we're going to try it. So the big picture, right? So most of you're juniors-ish, right? Yeah. Okay. So this is the next in the part of the series of foundations of nanotechnology. So there's physical principles, chemical principles, biological principles, and so this is chemical. And so we're talking about what are the chemical forces, what are the chemical systems that underlie nanoparticle stabilization and nanoparticles interacting with the world. Okay, so today we're going to talk about some housekeeping stuff, and then we're going to talk a little bit about surfaces of nanoparticles. But let's dive right into some of the housekeeping stuff. So again, you all found it. I was going to wait a few more days to run a roster in case there's ads drops, but at some point I want to run a roster and see who's actually is here. And have you sign in. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 to noon. How do those forces contribute to orbitals and molecular bonds? Okay, that's then going to be an exam. Is those two sections. We're going to have 3 exams because I think at an exam is a good time to kind of take stock of the situation. And so if it's awful, you can tell me if it's awful. We can talk about what's working, what's not working. So there's going to be 3 exams, a midterm there on the 20th of October, a midterm on the 8th of November, and then a final one at the 8th of December, right before the final, okay? So basically week 3, week 6, week 10, okay? Those last few weeks have a couple days off because of holidays, so that's why we're doing 6 through 10, okay? And then the final will be cumulative, okay? So the first section then again is going to be on these forces. The second part, as we move into using those forces, things like band structure, carbon-based materials, and how those forces look in carbon nanorods and graphene and fullerene, and in crystals. So how do crystallographic notation, packing structures, and then finally we'll move into the last third is surfaces, surface stabilization, surface passivation, and then like self-assembly. How do we take nanoparticles and put them together into these kind of higher ordered structures, okay? So at each of these exams, I don't know yet if I'm going to do it as a, yeah, if we break it into 3 exams, they're slightly more manageable bites. And if the first 2, at least, I'll include some kind of survey where you can give me some feedback. I don't know if I'm going to do it with a doodle or if it's going to be written with the test, but please participate in that because, like I said, I will use that feedback to make the course better, okay? Okay, questions on like that kind of course design stuff, yeah.
I noticed in the readings you have several different reading sources cited, like we have Tau, Wave,
yes.
CTR.
Yes.
So what's the textbook situation of this course?
Okay, so this is a new discipline, right? So there is no good textbook. Right. And so Andrea Tau is, where's my required reading? Is working on writing one. Okay, so she sent me a couple book chapters that you guys are going to help me ferret out and integrate. I like them. I think they're really clean. This thing is bad, but it's kind of the best thing that's out there right now. So what we're going to do is take the best of it and integrate other pieces, okay? But I don't want to get you in the situation where you're buying 10 million textbooks, right? But yeah, so this one, I think if you don't, in addition to using it in here, you will use this in other classes, you will use this in your career, or you'll sell it back at the end of the quarter and get, a lot of your money back. So this one and this thing are the 2 that you need to buy, okay? This thing is $50 at the bookstore. Yeah.
You notice you have a big 4 there, so instead of...
This is a typo, yeah. Nope, and this should be 50.
Do you know if it's the same reader as last fall?
It is largely the same. There's one chapter that's different. Yep. So there's an organic chemistry chapter that's different. So yeah, if you want to share it, I'm sure you can share it. I'm not out, I don't get your $50. The bookstore, where most of this money goes to is back to the original publisher. They get, more than 50% was that. It's not even the paper. But I think long term, this will have value for you. So those are the 2 that I strongly suggest. There'll definitely be homework that comes out of here. So this is particularly kind of required. So again, who's had Andrea Tau? Have you guys had her for other courses? No, nobody has. Okay. So anyway, these chapters will be on TED. One is already there. Yeah.
Are either of these on reserve in the library?
I can put one on reserve. Yes, Rosie. Yes, the question was, are these on reserve? I'm trying to repeat the question so it's linked to the video. Yes, I will. I don't have a spare copy of that one. I'll see if they have it. Let me put that on my to-do list. Reserve. And then I can definitely get a copy of the reader on reserve. Okay. And there's going to be other miscellaneous things on TED. For example, Wade Organic Chemistry Chapter 1 is already up there, and that's for Monday. Okay? Okay. Let's see, did we skip anything? We've kind of bouncing around. Grades, that's everybody's favorite topic. So I think I'm going to not weight the exam super heavy. I'm going to do it like this, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. So that takes the stress off a little bit. The final will be cumulative. So you're going to have to study all three of these things. But the final's only still going to be worth 20%. And there's also going to be weekly-ish homework. So I don't know if we'll get you 10 sets of homework, but probably 8 or so. Okay? Do a good job. This is going to be largely handwritten stuff. These are going to be problems. If there's a discussion, pros and cons of this, or compare and contrast, if you want to type it, that'll probably make it easier. Grades, I'm planning on just holding the standard 90, 80, 70, 60. I'll probably weight it. What's really nice is when you see these natural breaks in the grade distribution. I'll be very transparent with you. I generally, like at every final, I'll come in and plot the scores with everybody's name and the score that they got. No, I'm kidding. Just the scores, and to try to look at where the breaks is, and then I'll generally curve it based on that. What else? Pluses and minuses. Again, I'm inclined to just the 97, 93, 90 to 93 is a minus, or 97 and above is an A+, but we'll see how that works. I will drop the 2 lowest homework scores if I can get 90% of you to fill out the course evaluation at the end of the quarter. And the reason is because, when I was a student, I thought, oh, this is such a pain. I finished the final, and now they want me to fill out this one other form, right? And people really actually look at it. Like, my boss looks at it, and I look at it when I go to teach a class the next year, right? So whenever I'm teaching also Nano 247, which is a biophotonics class this fall, and so those are some of the first slides I put up, is here's the course evaluation from last year, okay? So this could be a get out of jail free card if you can get all your buddies to participate, okay? Required reading we did. It's like anything, half of life used to be showing up. So attendance, please come to class. I will post the lectures, but there's going to be a lot of .cam kind of stuff. And I'm not planning on posting that. There will be the video, but I'm not going to scan in all of my notes at the end of the class, okay? Are there strong feelings of chalkboard versus .cam? Do we care one way or the other? No, because chalk is filthy, so I'm inclined to stay with this because I just don't like getting it all over me. So, okay, I'm not planning on having any makeup exams. You've got the dates here, so lock it into your calendar. And this, don't cheat. I fired my first graduate student over this issue, so I really care about it. So you can work with each other on the homework, right? Especially engineering is a very collaborative discipline, so it's expected that you're going to work together, but you can't plagiarize each other, and you can't copy from each other, and you can't use old homeworks. Yes?
Regarding exam dates,
yes.
You said that they're something we want to get in the calendar.
Yep.
It says here that exam dates are likely to change, or is that just the general statement?
No, the exams will not change. No, the exams will not change. The topics may change. The biggest thing I'm worried about is that I'm not going to have enough time. So that I'm going to budget for today, that I'm just not going to have enough time to get through everything, and then that's going to spill over into next week, and that's going to spill over. And so, in terms of time management, that's my biggest worry. Or, I have all this stuff and I start lecturing and you're like, we know this. We've known this since we were freshmen. So those kinds of worries. But no, the exams are definitely locked in. Yeah, good question. Problem sets. Here's the thing about due dates, is that my life runs on due dates, right? Like, if I turn in a federal grant a day late, they don't say, oh, we'll just knock off 50% of your score. No, they say, come back in 4 months, because that's the next time it's open again, And so life runs on deadlines, and so this will also run on deadlines. Here, however, we'll do something like 50% late for each day. The problem is that when we sit down to grade it, we want to be done with it, right? If you turn in, then we have to go back and pull out the key again and be sure that we're grading you fairly. So that's the main reason that things are, especially these homeworks, are going to be due. I'm aiming for generally handing one out on Monday and it being due the following Monday. That's what I'm planning on. You'll always have a week. It may be Wednesday to Wednesday, Friday to Friday, but that's kind of what I'm planning on. Okay. We're probably not going to grade the entire thing, but we're going to grade multiple problems, and then you're going to get the key back. Okay. And that's why this is kind of loosey-goosey. I'm already going to drop 2 of these. The point of this is not to. The exams are what are here to test your knowledge. The homeworks are to prep you for getting that knowledge, right? So I don't look at that's why I'm not grading the whole thing, is because it's just a bandwidth issue, and again, that's not really the point of the homework, okay? So this should be a really easy 20% for all of you, okay? So good plan of attack, read the text the week before. Some of them are denser than others. Come to class. Go to TA office hours, comes to my office hours. If you're nailing the homeworks, if you feel comfortable on the homeworks, you should do well on the exams, okay? There's not going to be any, there will be some that require a deeper level of thought, some exam questions that require a deeper level of thought, but it's not going to be, something that was buried in the reading that I didn't cover in class and I didn't cover in the homeworks. That's just not my style, okay? Turn off your glowing rectangles. We live in a world of glowing rectangles. So I don't know, if you want to take notes on your laptop, that's fine. Yes, here's one, this giant glowing rectangle. But again, it can be a distraction. Okay. We did the big picture. Okay, so that's kind of like housekeeping stuff. So any questions about that? Okay. So today I'm going to start with surfaces. Surfaces is where we're going to end up, because ultimately when we have a nanoparticle, this is where the business occurs. This is where the material sees the world. This is where we want to do a lot of our chemistry. And so today I just want to touch very briefly on some of the issues about the surface of a nanoparticle and how the size changes as a function, or the properties change as a function of the size. So again, the reason that nano is so unique is because of these very high surface area to volume ratios. Well, why do you care, right? Well, you care because if you have a lot of surface area and you have a very catalytic or very powerful material, then you have a lot of surface area where your catalyst can interact with your substrate. Or if you want to release a lot of drug, you have a lot of area to load your drug and then to go on and release it. Okay? So this is something that you might have seen before. A plot of how does the surface fraction, the amount of material that's on the surface, change as a function of the radius, okay? And then we can also plot the same thing for what fraction is in the interior. Periodically, you're going to see this kind of notation. This is my cue to myself for to follow on my own personal notes, okay? So I'm going to switch now to this .cam. And because we know that the volume of a sphere, how does that look? Is 4/3 pi r cubed, right? And we know that the surface area is pi r squared. So then if we want to know the surface area to volume ratio,
Surface area is 4 pi r squared?
thank you, 4 pi r squared, then this reduces, surface area to volume ratio is 3 over r, right? So then if this is the surface area to volume ratio, everything else in the nanoparticle that's on the interior is that, right? 1 minus 3 over r. And so that's what this simply plots. Right, and so there's a lot of action here at this really low regime. And so, you know, a lot of people argue about what is the right definition of nano, right? Is it here? Is it here? Is it 1,000? But from a purely fundamental kind of perspective, that's why the 10 to 100 nanometer regime is so often argued, is because this is where the surface area to volume ratio is changing so dramatically, okay? So what about some of these other systems, right? What if we had a square or a cube or a cube or a rod? So we can do the same thing for some of these. So if for a cube with each dimension of L, right? This is going to be, the surface area is going to be 6 because it has 6 times that length squared. And the volume is going to be L times L times L, right? So the surface area to volume ratio is 6 over L. Andrea's book has 3 over L, and I wrote her, and I was like, this is a typo, right? And I still haven't heard back. So when you read this, make sure I'm not missing anything, because I'm really sure that I'm right, and it's just a typo, okay? And we'll do extra credit probably, because Andrea said have them give me feedback. So if I've kind of found a couple typos. So if you find other typos, email me, and I'll double check it and give you an extra credit point or 2, okay? Okay, so what about something that looks like this? These are kind of common, right? People like these kind of shapes because they get out of tumors really well. And nobody really knows why right now, but it turns out that it's this kind of rod-like design versus a sphere. If you inject these into a tumor, these tend to get out like almost twice as much as a sphere. And it kind of makes, or a disc. If you inject something that's shaped more like a pancake, those tend to get out a lot better too. Spheres were some of the first things that people could make, but now it's turning out that in terms of getting things to tumor, they're actually almost some of the worst. So it's not entirely clear. People are coming at it from different areas. But anyway, this is why these shapes are kind of interesting. So here you would have this length and then this radius, right? So your edges, right, this edge and this edge are going to be pi r squared, but you have 2 of them, right? So that is the surface area of those 2 edges. You also have so let's write that, edges. You also then need to figure this area, right? So that's just going to be the circumference of a circle, 2 pi r, right? So that's for one plane, but you have the entire area, so it's 2 pi r L, okay? So the entire surface area then are those two added, right? So 2 pi RL plus 2 pi R squared. Okay. So then what's the volume? The volume of a cylinder is just pi R squared times the length, right? So if we do the surface area to volume, okay. Now, what's more common? So this would be for something like a regular gold nanorod. So something like this, where an aspect ratio is 3:4, 2:3:4, where you really do need to consider both the length and the width of the surface area. And this is kind of cheating, right? Because this is assuming that it's a perfectly flat end, right? So that would be a good test question or homework question to say, okay, now go back and redo this if you assume that it looks like, right, where they just assume these are two semicircles rather than a flat edge. But what about these kind of situations where you have something like a carbon nanotube where your aspect ratio is 100, or these kinds of really flat pancake kind of designs? So yeah. So then you can just assume that for something like this, that here the length, oh wait, first if we solve this out, this becomes 2 over R plus 2 over L, right? So that's the surface area to volume ratio of something, an aspect ratio of roughly 2 to 5. Okay. But if you have a situation like this, like a nano disk, then the length is much smaller than the radius, and the surface area to volume just becomes 2 over R, right? Our situation, if this is very, very long, length is much bigger than, I'm sorry.
Professor, do you mind
Yeah.
photographing this?
Nope. So on this situation, length is much, much bigger than R. Okay? So if we look up here and length becomes much, 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 much bigger, we're dividing by a bigger and bigger and bigger number, right? So this is wrong. Sorry, right? If in our nanotube length becomes much, much bigger than R, this term cancels out and we're left with just 2 over R, right? Let's do it again. So, right? So we know that our surface area to volume for any generic tube is 2 over R, it's 2 over L. So for a nanodisk, where the radius is much, much bigger than the length, right? Radius, we're going to have a bigger, 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 bigger number, so we're going to be dividing by a bigger and bigger, bigger number. So this term can essentially be ignored. So we can say that the surface area to volume for a disk essentially is 2 over L, and that the surface area to volume for a tube is 2 over R, right? Okay. So those are just kind of fun rules of thumb. But what you can do then is start to look at how does the surface area to volume ratio change for these different diameters, right? And then you can start to build a nanoparticle that has the features that you want to program in. Okay. Back to this. Okay, we're also going to talk about another way of estimating the amount of business that's going. Have you guys seen this before? Okay. This is one of the other issues that I have with one of the insecurities I have about this is that I don't feel like I have a super firm grasp of what you learned in other classes. So if you're like, we have seen this 3 times, dude, like no, so tell me that and we can skip it. So the spherical cluster approximation is a slightly more sophisticated way of understanding how much business is going on the surface. Okay, so again, nanostructures have many atoms on the surface, and so this estimates how many of those surface atoms are present. It has a number of flaws. First of all, it assumes that it assumes all of your clusters are a sphere. And as we just showed, not everything is a sphere. So you generally only would want to use the spherical cluster approximation model for things that are roughly spherical. Is a cube roughly spherical? Well, it's more roughly spherical than a rod. It also assumes that your packing fraction is perfect, which, as you know, is impossible. But it's a fairly simple and powerful way, actually, to estimate the number of atoms that are on the surface, right? This is essentially what we're gonna derive as a way to estimate. If I have 540 sodium atoms, what percentage of those are on the surface of the nanoparticle? Or sodium, if I have, right? That's a great test question. Okay. So what we assume we're going to have is a bunch of atoms. So these dots are atoms. And each atom has a radius of RA.
The autofocus is shaky.
Bummer. Okay, magic. Thank you for telling me that. So if this is the radius of the atom, and then we also have RC, the radius of the cluster. Okay. This is a slightly finer pen. Tell me, is that bad or worse? That's probably worse, right? Yeah, okay.
Autofocus is the problem, not the pen.
Yeah. So then we know the volume of the cluster. This is a big assumption, right? The volume of the cluster is the number of atoms times the volume of one atom. Okay. So if we assume that this is spherical, then the volume of the cluster also equals 4/3 pi radius of the cluster cubed. Right?
Professor,
Yes.
is that the radius, or what does it say? I can't read it. R added.
The radius of the cluster. The volume of the cluster is pi r of the radius of the cluster.
Okay.
Let's
The top left one, is that the radius of the cluster?
radius of the cluster. Let's switch to chalk and do a test for the rest of it, just so we'll go both ways, because I don't know what's going to be better. Right? So we've got lots of atoms. So the volume of a cluster is the number of atoms times the volume of the cluster. Okay? We also know that, so if this is the radius of the cluster, right, or RC, that the volume of the cluster is 4/3 pi RC, right? Cubed, right? Okay, and then similarly, the volume of an atom, radius of the atom cubed. Okay, so then what we can do is substitute the volume of the atom into here, okay, and have this expression for the volume of a cluster, and set that equal to this expression for the volume of a cluster. Make sense? So we're going to say 4/3 pi radius of the cluster cubed equals Na, number of atoms, times 4/3 pi radius of the atom cubed. Okay? So we can do some canceling and get an expression for the radius of the cluster as that, right? So that's kind of neat, right? So now you have, based on the number of atoms and the radius of each atom, you can start to estimate the size of the cluster. Okay? And so it's kind of, it's linear with the radius, right? So when we start looking at more periodic trends, we'll look at small atoms, big atoms, but it's going to largely be linear with this, but not with the number of atoms, which makes sense. Okay. Was that better than the dot cam or worse? Chalk is better? Okay, well, I'm going to have to wear shittier clothes for this class then. I bought these nice new shirts. There's this company called Proper Cloth, and you mail them the shirt that you love already, and they send you back a carbon copy of it, made like with the exact dimensions. Proper Cloth, yes. Yeah, it was like $100. That's expensive to me, I don't know. Okay, so what if we want to know how many atoms on the surface? So the number of atoms on the surface in S. Was that an excuse me? Yeah. Yeah.
This doesn't depend if your atom is charged. So like, this will not be able to be an accurate measurement of the radius. Is that correct?
This is assuming ground state. Yes, yeah. So, and it's also not assuming a mixture. So if you had something like a cadmium selenide, it's not accounting for that. It's assuming it's assuming you're making these materials smaller and smaller and smaller. Yeah.
For those of us watching at home, what was the question?
Thank you. The question was, does this affect the charge, or how is charge considered into this material? And the answer is it's not affecting charge. What could maybe you could think about? Yeah, it's not. This is just considering you're packing these items in together. Yeah. Crap, we're running out of time. Okay, so if we have, how many atoms are on the cluster? So first we have to do the surface area of the cluster, which is 4 pi radius of the cluster squared, right? So we know from over there this expression of radius of cluster that the surface area of the cluster, 4 pi, okay, surface area of the cluster. And if we then take again, we're trying to figure out how many atoms, okay? So if we have this sphere that has all of this surface area, then how would we find the number of atoms on the surface?
Isn't that expression supposed to be squared, the RA cubed number of atoms?
Thank you. Yes. So how would we find then the number of atoms if we know this surface area of the cluster?
Just solve for NA, like 5 by 4 pi square root and then divide by
the volume of an atom?
Or the volume of the atom, which I think you're kind of saying. So if we know, not the volume per se, like the cross-sectional area of one atom, right? So if we know that this, like essentially the cross-section of one tiny atom is that, okay? So then we're going to do the NS, number of atoms is this. Over the cross-sectional area is just pi radius pi r squared, right? And so then this solves for a to the 2/3. Yes?
I'm confused where you got the NS and 4 pi are a square term from.
NS is the number of atoms that are on the surface. So here we calculated the total surface area, and then we're doing the area of just one atom, right? So if we have all of this area, and then we know the area of one atom, then that's the number of atoms.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry, this is the number on the surface, right? NS is the number on the surface. Yeah. So this is just one atom area, all surface area. We good? Okay, one more question. What about the fraction? So just slightly different question, right? That's the number. This is the fraction. Let's call it Fs. So Fs then is just very easily the number on the surface over the number total, right? And then we know from over here, this expression for the number on the surface, 4 times the total number of atoms to the 2/3 power. Okay? So then we can reduce that to 4 over the cube root of the total number of atoms. And this is another useful tool. Okay? So what does that look like? So for just a, oops. Yeah.
When people derive models for surface energy, do they make these assumptions and like factor it into their model? Like this assumption, like
It probably depends what kind of model they're using. There are certainly more sophisticated models than this, but this is a lot of the basis of the original models. Yeah. Okay, we're probably gonna run out of time. So, but there's a few more things I want to hit on next time. But this is what this looks like. So, what should drive you crazy as soon as you look at this?
looks similar to the other graph we saw.
Yes, but what else?
Is the fraction greater than
Exactly, right? Because if you have the percentage, you have a point where you have one. So if you had one atom in your cluster, right? What fraction would be on the surface? 100%, right? But if you solved it for this, you would get 400%, right? Which is impossible, and that's why this is a model, right? And so this is one of a learning tool is knowing where your model fails and where it succeeds. Okay, so we're gonna next Monday, talk about where it deviates from this. So this would have been my next slide, is where it starts to deviate from reality, where it serves and where it's bad. Read that Wade chapter 1. It's on TED. Okay. Thank you guys.
Thank you.